to the New Zealand Warriors, who have lost Leeson Amo, who's retired, Kane Evans, Fusatua, Hiku, Lawton, Mamalo, who left early last year, Sean O'Sullivan, Perm, Tanua Brown, Townsend, RTS, Paul Turner, and they've picked up Finu, Sean Johnson, Kepu, and Aaron Penne. Also, Ash Taylor, I think, was on trial and train. I think he signed a contract.
Yep.
He's been upgraded to the squad.
He's been upgraded to this squad. So their best
RTS is dead set the most upset I've been about a player leaving our game for quite a long time.
Superstar. And he'll be an absolute star of... I think he's playing this weekend.
I thought he made his...
He might have.
I don't watch Super Rugby.
He's been named for the...
Blues, I think.
Yeah.
So the top 17 looks something like Walsh, DWZ, Berry, Pompey, Montoya, Tavita Harris, Tavita, I should say, Johnson, Fanua Blake, Egan, Lodge, Aitken, Curran, Tohu, who's obviously out till mid-season, Tavunga, Penne, Murdoch Masala, Sirinen, give or take injuries and whatnot. Barney, what do the Warriors mean to you this year?
Well, just on the trade period, I think they've lost a little bit of depth, which will hurt the side a little bit. They've picked up a couple of decent halves, which should help direct the team around the field. But the way that the Warriors come in and out of games and just disappear for 40 minutes and, go from a position where they were dominating a game of football to being completely run over and then losing the game at the back end of the game, I just can't come at the Warriors. Sean Johnson will add the structure that they absolutely need. A lot will depend on whether Ash Taylor plays 6 beside him and whether he gets back into a position of being a first-class half, which he hasn't done for the majority of his career. Nicarima also floating around that spot. I don't know how he fits into this side anymore, maybe as a 14, but... I've got serious questions around their defence and the way that the middle of the field just seems to disappear at different times, and teams just march upfield against the Warriors. When they're bad, they're horrendous. When they're good, they go okay, but they're just too wishy-washy for me. They just fold way too often. They need a hard edge in their middles. Fanua Blake adds that. Tavunga does at times, but he also gets a bit hot-headed and gets sent off. So I can't see him finishing any higher than 14th at the end of the season.
Wow. I don't disagree. I suppose I think their edges they miss Tohu Harris so much. Is the
and
thing?
He's
but
missing for like 6 weeks, I think, at the start of the season.
More, I think. Yeah. But Aitken and Curran were I'd be if I was a lot of other clubs, I'd be excited about setup, but defensively still a concern. Their front row really is fantastic. Fanua Blake is as good as anyone in the game, and Lodge does produce minute after minute, whatever you think of him. But beyond that, aren't they just the Warriors of the last 15 years, rocks and diamonds?
Pretty much.
They'll probably beat Melbourne one week and then lose to Newcastle next week, and everyone go, oh, how'd that happen? And we'll overanalyze it too much. But beyond that, I think Reece Walsh is in for a tough year. I think he's going to be targeted. I think he's going to get smashed, and I think second year syndrome's coming. As much as I really enjoy him, and if he ends up miserable, who knows? But I don't. Do we really need to spend a lot more time talking about this, Gumpy? What have you made of it?
Bottom 4. Wouldn't back them with counterfeit money.
What about Monopoly money?
I told you last year that in footy tipping comps, I wouldn't have tipped them for 8 years in a match.
Yeah.
I won't.
Yeah.
Continue to tip the Warriors regardless of who they play. And you're right, they can beat sides, but I just can't.
Is it just go, oh, well, they got me?
I just can't come to them. They've got Sean Johnson back, and as I like Sean Johnson as a player, but how many teams has he ever got to a final or to... We say the same about... But I mean very rarely. And he had better players around him when he did that.
When he was onto the field for the Sharks last year, I thought he had one of his better years, to be honest.
And he went all right. But again, injured, he's getting older.
Yeah.
Is he going to be one of these guys' body starts to fail?
He's not the runner he used to be.
He doesn't light it up
like he's not. There's no running game. They've got some blokes with potential. Your Reece Walsh, your Harris Tavitas, your Pompeys, and your Currans and blokes like that have got some ability, Fanua Blake and Lodge. It just be something when they put that jersey on. I don't know. On paper they look.
Just seems to be
And
an
Nathan Brown's not exactly a bloke who's going to crack a culture and
on paper they look all right.
drink the sweet
but
gooey
I
side.
just, you know what? Where they finish wouldn't surprise me. I'll have them bottom 4. They could run last. They could
There are
run
a couple
last.
of really bad teams.
Look,
Yeah.
you know my feelings about a couple of players from a certain team.
And I agree. I think we're on the same wavelength.
In terms of that, but it wouldn't. If the Warriors ran last, I wouldn't sit back and say, "Oh, I'm shocked."
Did you ever much to do with Josh Curran growing up?
He played in our system, in the schoolboy system for Sydney West. Was really good, lovely kid.
Is he
was
a
always
Penrith junior, isn't he?
Yep, he's was really good as a kid, and worked hard and was never the biggest kid and whatever, and playing in a comp, I guess, where there were a lot of big boppers, and he worked really hard, and he's a great kid, and that's what I say. Potentially, he's got
some guts about him,
some
that
ability
kid.
and guts,
Yeah,
and he
absolutely.
works hard and he gets in front. But again, I think he's going to suffer that. He's a back rower that may not quite be big enough. In the end, he's a very good.
Actually-
He's a good back rower, but does that a couple of inches of
He's not a disruptive
height
back
and a
rower.
couple of kilos.
I want to. I promise we're getting to you, Ollie, but it is actually a concern when you actually line up Curran and then Ewan Aitken, who is essentially a centre.
Correct.
That leaves him a bit. That's not exactly Crichton and Tupanua or.
And I'm putting
And I love them both, and I think
Ewan
they're both
Aitken
finishing.
in the Chance Nickel Clockstad bucket.
Put him back to centre.
Cannot pass a ball.
No,
That's
why
they put him
second
in
row.
the second
Yeah,
row.
and he was very good there. Ollie,
If there was any club where you could have said, "Don't worry, Ollie, we're getting to you," I probably couldn't give a fuck if you just skip me to the Warriors.
let's get to Newcastle.
But I guess the one thing I will say, it's sort of interesting, the half situation. It should be Harris DeVita, but pretty much last year when the Warriors signed Johnson, they had about 4 halves and they had to at least let one go. Sean O'Sullivan's ended up back at Penrith, but I think Harris DeVita was sort of the one that was like, I'll put my hand up and leave at the end of this year, and that's where all the rumours have come. I think there was Canberra for a bit before Fogarty ended up
I'd have loved
there,
to
and
have
there's
him at
been
the
rumours.
Bulldogs as 7
Yeah.
with Burton.
Oh.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I feel like
Solves the problem.
I think the Warriors have
Absolutely.
soured on him a bit because he was the one who sort of put his hand up when.
I think they'll get
I
rid of
think
Nicarima before they get rid of Harris.
Well, that's
DeVita.
I think he's leaving at the end of the year anyway because the reports are he's the one who's put his hand up and said, I'll leave because, well, what have you got for me long term? And unfortunately, I could probably see politicking come into that a little bit, where he should be the one playing there, but because he's the one who's put his hand up, they might favour Taylor. I
He
could
should
see
play
him.
7 and
I could see him starting
Johnson
and
at
Taylor
6.
possibly coming in throughout the year. Unfortunately, by the end of the year, I think Ash Taylor probably plays more than Harris DeVita, even if Harris DeVita's better. But I hope I'm wrong. I hope
I
that's
think
just
the
the
upside
pessimist in
from
me coming
Harris
out.
DeVita is a lot more than what you've got
Yeah.
with Ash Taylor. To
I
be
think-
honest,
Again, he's another player at the club that's got enormous potential. Harris DeVita, like
He's
You
Does
watch
he,
him
does he
and you-
need to be under? Does he need to be under a Bennett? Like you just go right, go send him to the Dolphins. and
quite possibly.
Who knows?
Well, you look at the market
or,
at the
or a
moment.
Robinson, or a, you never know.
You look at the players off contract at the end of this year, he is genuinely the best halfback on the market at the moment. And you know what? If Sexton happens to not work out this year at the Titans, I want to sign him yesterday. Like he's that player where that ceiling is still sort of up there a bit and he's not quite reached it.
Yeah, you put him into a. You know where it's open is Parramatta.
Yeah. And,
Parramatta's next.
well, I think they were sort of rumoured a little bit as well.
Nick
And-
Ream was on that radar at some point, I think.
Para, I think they
knows?
offered me
They
a
need
contract
anyone.
the other
Yeah,
day.
you're right.
Parramatta's
But,
got a lot of questions.
The only
going
other
on
thing I'll
next
say
year.
about the Warriors throughout my sort of running joke throughout last year was that Luke Thompson was playing with a bunch of geeks and was probably waiting at halftime at the airport to go back to England. Well, I think this year the running joke for me is going to be Adam Fanua-Blake's playing with a bunch of geeks and it's just
We just signed him 2043, so.
a lot of fun times ahead for Adam Fanua-Blake.
In terms of their draw, I should have mentioned that to sort of be professional or something. They've got a good draw. They've got another meh draw, but a lot of mid and low carders that they could beat up if they're on song, but could be beaten up. Well, some of this stuff is obviously.
And again,
if
how
one
long are they
team's
going to
going
be
one way-
away from home again?
Yeah.
You can
Well, they
only-
just
half the
cancelled. They
season.
announced
That's what I
today that
mean.
they,
You can, They can only do that for a certain period of time. And you saw them wane in some games last year where
Absolutely.
you thought,
Yeah.
is it going to
But
be
there
the
was
same
still a
thing?
live chance with, 4 to 5 weeks or something of making the 8,
You
and
know
they
that
just
you-
fell
and
apart.
fell apart.
Yeah. But then. Yeah. Oh.
there's going to be a
Let's
game.
get to
There's going to be a
Newcastle.
game where
Let's
they
bag
lose
some more
14
people.
points to 12 to the Cowboys. We're going to have to talk Daggy off the roof purely because of how bad the game is. And
No, but remember, the game that sums up
Yeah.
both the Warriors and the Tigers is that second time they played last year was like 12-10, and Tigers should have won by 40. But the only reason it didn't is because Reece Walsh put on 2 tries, but both teams were abysmal. It was just
couldn't do a
abysmal
thing,
viewing
yeah,
for
just
sig-
throwing
you
passes that
wanted to
hit the
just
ground,
try and
missing tackles
I'm sitting there
everywhere.
trying to not fall
Yeah.
asleep, and
I turned it over to maths.
then
and now we've got
if you are a maths man, come.